I have gone back and forth about wanting to post anything about this, but not only has enough time passed and it's still weighing on me, so that means I gotta purge it out. And if you're reading this, then you're the benefactor of some of that purge, I guess. So last night I was listening to some Billy Strings. You may have heard of him. Some Billy Strings playing with the Billy and the Kids band out at Red Rocks, which I went to a couple of years ago. And that happened to be right after COVID kind of thing. Things were still kind of shaky at best. And I was also on medical leave and was waiting to even be seen by a psychiatrist. Now, a few months prior, I had been hospitalized for psychosis. I didn't feel safe in my home. You know, the last thing I needed was more COVID alone time. And although on medical leave, I was not supposed to leave town, according to the rules of my medical leave, unless I had some express written consent. But I had already, before I was hospitalized, had planned on taking that trip out to Colorado. Anyway, the dates moved around a little bit. And thankfully, in the meantime, before I had gotten formal help from a psychiatrist, I had been working with a health coach who I started working with before I became hospitalized. It was just kind of a, too little, too late kind of thing where, it was helping me, but it didn't help me enough. And I'll also say that those techniques that I learned from that health coach that I visited out in Colorado over the course of that weekend, I still use today. So I'm very glad that I was able to meet up with her in person out there after just working with her for like 6 weeks over Zoom calls. Now, also in this time, I traveled with my folks to a family wedding, which was out of state. Because, my family lives out of state. They don't live where I live, for the majority of them. And also, I traveled with a friend of mine out of the state. She drove, and we spent the hotel, weekend in a hotel, went to a couple shows, and had a great time for her birthday. Of course, some pictures on my Facebook, blah, blah, blah. And I got a nice Nastygram from the company that I worked for. And they had been observing me, which, apparently they do that for medical leave. People make sure nobody's, bucking the system, I guess. But also in that time, I had started to socialize out with other people and go to some open stages in the area. And of course, I posted about that as well. So, living my life as normal people do. But since I was on medical leave, that was deemed unacceptable. And it was at that time I received a threatening phone call from somebody in HR. Yelled at me, a mental patient who was not really even seen by a psychiatrist yet, only the one at the hospital, but they decided to yell at me over the phone and tell me that I wasn't allowed to leave or go anywhere or visit anyone, even after I told them that my family doesn't even live in town. Because they were like, well, you can go places if your family lives in town. So, fuck one. That's right, I said fuck you. And number two, I'm very glad that I went forth and did those things, because guess who's still around in my circle? It's not. And that's after 18 years of being an excellent employee, people telling me that they want me to come back to their area, people wanting me to come back and be a supervisor, my personal supervisor telling me I would make an excellent supervisor, and all these sorts of things, okay? So, I'll just say that much, because I don't want to throw any names under the bus specifically. But when you're working for a corporation, that's just how it goes, okay? So just know that. So yeah, I happened to be on YouTube the other day listening to that music again and just remembering how much that it meant to me. Anyway, how much that meant to me and how much it meant to be taking control of my life and living my life according to my rules and not the rules of a corporation who did not really care at my mental health at that point. Otherwise, they would not be physically yelling at a mental patient who was suicidal suicidal, people. She was suicidal. I did not feel safe in my home. I was afraid I was going to harm myself, and I'm trying. And of course, this is all after I had survived being attacked in my home twice. So I had some severe PTSD going on at this point. Now, what really pisses me off about Caterpillar is that anytime I went to apply for a new job at Caterpillar, an application, they have you fill out this form. And it's like, oh, have you ever been diagnosed with this, or this? And PTSD is on there. Well, I've had PTSD for a long time, and it got even more aggravated after I was attacked twice in my home, obviously. To the point of me feeling so paranoid that I thought, again, somebody was going to be attacking me in my home. Now, granted, if Allstate had paid me the money, the $5,000 that they owed me to fix my doors in a timely manner, and if my security system from Vivint had actually worked, that's always fun when you get a 3 a.m., your alarm goes off and nobody shows up to your fucking house, but yet they still want money. But I'm getting back off of track a little bit here. Anyway, that was some of the stuff leading up to my hospitalization. But back to getting healthy, yeah, I don't regret going to Colorado. I don't regret meeting my health coach. I don't regret taking that time that I had to go and make myself healthy as I was actually supposed to do. I even went to one of my healthcare practitioners, and I got a doctor's note that said that I could travel to visit friends or family. Because, I live alone. I didn't even have a dog at that point. Now you tell me, for your mental health, what is supposed to be good? What is a corporation supposed to actually do to help their employees in that manner? To put them on house arrest as if they're a fucking prisoner? A fucking prisoner? What crime did I commit? The crime of being worked to death? Round the clock? Always on call? Oh, and let's see, my abuser also lived in the town of my office. He moved to the town where my office was at. So every time I drove over to that town, even though we were working from home, my hair appointments were still there. Every time I drove over there, I would get a panic attack. So again, something I was not sympathetic to was me wanting to continue to work outside of that office when we had been doing so for over 2 years, and nobody had complained about my work performance, not one iota, until 2022, shortly before I was terminated. And shortly before I was terminated, I was struggling with finding the right medication. I had been previously diagnosed with ADHD, and I was still waiting to get some medication from OSF, which, it's not OSF's fault, but, when you have to go through psychiatry, and I don't know if you've tried to make an appointment with a psychiatrist lately, but it's few and far between, the service options. So again, before I was even able to get medicated for the ADHD that I had been clinically diagnosed with, and I had submitted a leave of absence actually to out all this health stuff and just focus on it really hard and try and get the right medications, because I still wasn't having the right medications. They denied that request and just terminated me. Since then, they've also denied my unemployment. Classy. I could try and fight them on that, but I've since, tried to focus on moving forward and not looking backwards, especially at people who never, the last position that I was in, didn't really recognize my worth. I mean, I had worked in that position for up to 10 years, and when my old supervisor left, they interviewed 5 candidates. They didn't even choose me for an interview for that job, even though at one time she said that I could easily do that job, which, anytime you're working for your boss, not long, you kind of figure out what's going on. Anyway, a company that didn't really value my mental health, I'm kind of glad that they're not getting my time and energy now. Although I am disappointed in their HR, considering that they have openings in a company, and I could have gotten reassigned into probably a different, less stressful area, but that was nothing that they really wanted to work with me on. So instead of, using the strengths of their employees, they just decided to dismiss me. Now I have a bachelor's degree in communications, and I also have a master's in business, FYI. And I remember my manager at the time telling me I didn't have adequate leadership skills. And I just laughed pretty hard at that. Anyway, so as the story goes, we continue. And now that I'm in business for myself, I make my own rules and I have to lead myself. So how's that for leadership abilities? Imagine that. I know a lot of people are struggling, and especially when I was in the hospital, I had insurance at the time that I was in the hospital, although I still had, medical bills. But there are a lot of people in the hospital that, they were on public aid and things like that. And this was kind of like they hit a breaking point, just the same as I did. And unfortunately, I didn't have that time during COVID to stop and slow down and say, what's going on with my life? And life just caught up to me. And then I was forced, in a way, to address what was going on with my health and the type of people that I was surrounding myself with and the people that didn't value me as a person. So, like Kenny Rogers says, you got to know when to fold them. You know what I mean? When the deal's done, walk away. Who gives a fuck? Get out on your own. It's okay. Which, given my education and work history, I have plenty of opportunities to freelance or do consulting in the field that I was in. However, I have switched fields because that's just what I wanted to do and was planning on doing at the time. It just kind of came upon that I wasn't able to manage everything together, and having ADHD and when I was having depression, anxiety, and panic attacks, yet still working my stressful 6-figure round-the-clock type job, which again, nobody had any complaints until really April, and then it was May, June, July. So it was like 3 months later that I was terminated. That was the first time that they actually said anything specifically about my performance not being up to snuff. And considering everything that I had been through during that point, I'd say that's pretty fucking good. I mean, I remember one time when I had to tell one of my managers that, I do my own laundry, yes, I did hire a cleaning person a couple times when I was super depressed and working, because it's I just couldn't get it all done. Now that I'm not working full-time, well, it's more than full-time really at jobs like that, because your mind never gets to leave. But, I'll also say this too, that working at as a domestic violence survivor, there were people that I worked with that had been arrested for domestic violence and domestic battery, and I would have to go and work by them and perhaps travel with them. And I really didn't feel comfortable with that. But, again, it's is that a fight that I want to have to take with a corporation to save what? So that they can, try and just dismiss me again or, belittle my contributions? I don't think so. I was over it by that time. So in essence, the firing was just kind of a blessing in disguise of, a direction that I was headed anyway. It just, you'd think things are going to be a little bit, turn out a little bit differently or, go in a different direction. But I guess the moral of that story is, if I had listened to them, right, about my worthiness, about who I'm supposed to be able to talk to and see, my mental health would not be on track as it is now. I would be 10 steps backwards, even though I would have been covered with, premium healthcare coverage. But, I had premium healthcare coverage for 18 years, and I still ended up in the hospital because their priority is the work, not the employee. Get that straight. And I worked with a woman who told me a long time ago, people think that, I could never leave this place. They can't survive without me. Trust me, they will replace your body tomorrow. It's not hard. Now, are they going to get the same effort out of that new person? You know what? That's their problem to figure out, okay? And I stuck around probably longer than I even needed to under a new supervisor that, again, not his fault. It's just how it fell out. You know what I'm saying? But I will close in saying that doing something that feels good is going to help you every single day and help you on your fitness journey, your health journey. Like anything, it's something that takes practice. But overall, it has changed my life for the better, and it's allowed me to move in a direction that benefits me over just benefiting others. So I can finally start to feel good about the position that I'm in on my personal life path, because, we're all different. Not everybody gets married or stays married. Not everybody has kids or whatnot, or can adopt kids, or however it works out. Not everybody has pets. I have a dog now, which I love, and likely anybody that's on the internet and follows me knows that I have a dog. Highly recommend. Again, what's sad, so many years I worked so long hours that the thought of kenneling an animal and being away from that dog, I didn't get a dog. But then when COVID hit, and then we were all working from home full time anyway, it became practical, and it was another kind of life-changing thing for me. Getting myself a companion and realizing how important that can be to somebody who does live alone, who doesn't have other people, who doesn't have, their entire family born and going to the same school and county and whatever that is. I know a lot of people don't have that, but there's some people that need a pretty big wake-up call to realize that not everyone has that support system built in. So, if you want to bag on high performers and people that give you their all, you need to kind of step back a little bit, because you might not really understand how they're getting that all accomplished. And if you actually tried it, you might fall flat on your fucking face. Of course, that's not directed at anyone personally, but I think you know what I'm saying. But I really want this message to be hopeful, a hopeful one. Follow your dreams. Don't let other people tell you how you can and can't spend your free time. That was a big wake-up call for me, especially when I was on medical leave, because it's like, well, if I'm stopped here and the time is now to figure out what makes me happy, well, let's see, spending time with friends and family and getting back into my music and things like that I was doing before. COVID hit, why shouldn't somebody be able to do that? Just because I'm not taking kids to soccer games, then that would have been deemed acceptable. Maybe by I don't know, but the insinuation that your mental health should come second to a corporate structure that is not going to value you tomorrow. I just couldn't ride with that anymore. It just wasn't working. So the good news is I didn't have to go and get a new restraining order against my ex, because I don't have to go to that town where my office is. And, when you work for yourself, your office can kind of be anywhere. So that's another pretty cool thing, especially I think people that are survivors of domestic violence, and, you don't necessarily want to have to pick up your whole life and move away from these people that you've interacted with or their family. But, you have to have a certain level of self-protection. And again, wasn't willing to work with me on that, and I was really disappointed. But they're a corporation. What can I say? They do them. That's their business at the end of the day. But you do have a choice. And I'll also say part of that choice for me was, looking at where I was at financially. Did I need to be paying over $200 a month to the cable company every month? No, I didn't. So, there were a lot of things that I drastically did to manage my life so that I wasn't dependent on somebody like for a six-figure income, and realizing what's important to me, and, can I live on less, and things of that nature, because giving my effort to one more day, I was then becoming sick all over again, and I knew I couldn't keep going down that path in that manner. And I know it's been like half a year, I guess, since I last formally worked for them, and it feels like such a much longer time. And I don't know if that's because of everything that's happening in the world or if that's just how life goes. But just think about that too. It's like, yeah, life can change. It can change in the blink of an eye. There's people in my family that have worked places for a long, long time, and then all of a sudden that company up and moved to a different country. So, you don't have everything within your control to begin with. So you need to understand how to kind of roll with the changes, be flexible, allow yourself the grace to explore other options, and allow yourself the time to make your own construct where you can realize the worth that you have, and not be reliant on the judgments of people who may or may not really know you, to be honest, nor care. I mean, let's be honest. When push comes to shove, who's going to show up? Who's going to show up to your door? And, the harsh truth for some people, myself included, it's some of those times was that, there really isn't anybody else. And that's okay, because I made it to a certain point on my own anyway, and had my own goals set. So don't let other people determine your goals. Don't let other people determine your path, especially if they've never done it, because you might be able to learn from their mistakes, but to learn from their success, you might have to find yourself some new mentors. That was also something while worker had mentioned to me when they heard that this person told me I didn't have any leadership skills. She actually told me, she's like, "Oh, I thought you should get away from them for a long time." It's kind of like when you break up with somebody and then all your friends are like, "Oh, we didn't really like them anyway." It's like, gee, thanks for letting me know now. But, hindsight's 2020 for us all. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up. So I hope you don't need a whole lot of 2020 hindsight in 2023. I hope your vision is clear, and I hope you're able to chase